possíveis para enganar o público.
There were some advertisements, very seductive advertisements, for people wanting to lose weight and were having problems losing weight. And they would be given, all expenses paid to go to a particular spa. But when they got to this spa and went in and signed in, it wasn't a spa, it was a psychiatric center. And then they couldn't get out.
What instead they received massive doses of mind-altering drugs, and they were kept for a lengthy period of time, and their insurance carrier was billed tremendous amounts of money for something that was unnecessary.
Mas as suas mentiras vão mais além dos seus departamentos e chegam aos tribunais, onde, como testemunhas pagas, dirão qualquer coisa para cobrar os seus honorários.
A psychiatric expert who will have one opinion in one scenario and a completely opposite opinion in another scenario based on which law firm or governmental agency is paying for his time.
The psychiatrist, on one hand, will tell the public that suicide can be prevented, but will go into court and tell a jury that suicide cannot be prevented. And then once you show his prior inconsistent statements, you also show that he is paid very well by pharmaceuticals, then the jury says, you know what, we're not so sure about you because you just lied to us.
Adicionamos à sua cobiça, desonestidade e avareza os seus crimes sexuais. Contando que são apenas 6% dos médicos do país, os psiquiatras são responsáveis por 1/3 dos delitos sexuais cometidos por médicos.
It has happened so often that by the mid-80s, the insurance companies who insure physicians across America started writing sexual claims out of the policies altogether. That's how common it was.
The system was so broken that more than 25,000 complaints had been registered, but nothing acted upon. When a psychiatrist has a patient, a female patient, and abuses them sexually, there's a very high probability they'll get away with it.
I've seen many cases where the mental health professional becomes very disturbed and is using very strange and odd treatments, and that can go on for many years with no one finding out about it because it's not very public. It's quite private. Things happen behind closed doors.
Infelizmente, os seus crimes sexuais frequentemente envolvem crianças. Bom exemplo é o Dr. C. Markham Berry, aparentemente um membro muito respeitado da sua comunidade. Mas tudo isso acabou quando foi preso por acusação de assédio sexual a crianças. Carrinhas carregadas de pornografia infantil foram retiradas da sua casa. E a investigação subsequente descobriu que ele havia abusado sexualmente de antigos pacientes, rapazes de 7 a 17 anos, os quais fotografou e dos quais abusou sexualmente. Tudo era parte do que o Estado chamou de os 50 anos de aventuras sexuais infantis desenfreadas e não detectadas de Berry. Este não é um incidente isolado. É o caráter cuidadosamente mascarado dos membros desta profissão. Em todas as cidades, estados e países, serão encontrados psiquiatras a cometer violações, abuso sexual, assassinato e fraude. E como verá, toda a credibilidade da psiquiatria depende da maior fraude de todas.
I was diagnosed with a chemical imbalance, manic depression.
They diagnosed me with having ADD.
He told me I had conduct disorder.
ADHD.
Mild depression.
Major depression. Manic depressive.
Borderline personality disorder. Compulsive disorder.
Anxiety, depression, and schizophrenia.
ADHD. Sleep disorder. Identity problem disorder.
There's no such thing as mental disorder. A mental disorder is whatever someone says it is, and if the person saying this is a mental disorder has enough power and influence, then people...
Somehow. When you build insurance companies, you can't say the word. You've got to say a number. And they have numbers for the most ridiculous things, like arguing with your mother or peeing in the bed.
Adolescent rebellion disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. Arithmetic learning disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. General anxiety disorder is a recent diagnosis.
For each one, there is a 5-digit code with a decimal point. Now, the implication of that is if I have illness 403 will believe, oh, that's a mental disorder.
Mas não se pode ter poder ou influência sem credibilidade. Então a psiquiatria fabrica a sua.
It's based on a grab bag of checklists for disorders that are published in a book called the DSM, which is the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual. There are no statistics in this book, by the way. That just makes it sound more scientific.
They create this cluster of disease, and they get together and they vote. Is this a disease? All in favor, say aye.
It's marketed as a scientifically based document. Now, the American Psychiatric Association, which publishes the DSM, do a lot of work to create an aura of scientific precision around the DSM, but it's not scientifically based.
Desde a primeira edição do DSM, o número de desordens mentais que foram votadas para serem incluídas no Manual de Diagnóstico de Psiquiatria cresceu para 374. E com cada nova desordem, os psiquiatras criam outra forma de defraudar o público.
If you have 27 ways to bill in the DSM, that's 27 ways to bill. If you have 300, that's 300 ways to bill. So you can pretty much find anyone walking on the street that could fit into a DSM somehow.
When you build insurance companies, you can't say the word. You've got to send in a number. And they have numbers for the most ridiculous things, you know, like arguing with your mother or peeing in the bed.
Adolescent rebellion disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. Arithmetic learning disorder is an official psychiatric diagnosis. General anxiety disorder is a recent diagnosis.
For each one, there is a 5-digit code with a decimal point. Now, the implication of that is if I have illness 403.16, that's different in some important and scientifically proven way from someone who has 403.17. And nothing could be further from the truth.
Por incrível que pareça, enquanto apresentam o DSM ao mundo como científico, os psiquiatras admitem livremente a sua absoluta falta de base científica.
We have no diagnostic reliable markers for almost any illness there is in the DSM.
What we're testing for in psychiatry, it's hard to say because there's nothing specifically.
But as far as a test that's clinically useful, basically we're not there yet.
We don't have any laboratory tests that we can use to determine whether somebody does or doesn't have a mental illness.
There are no good biological tests for detecting mental illness.
There is no test, there's no biopsy you can do.
There is no chemical test right now.
There are no specific tests to confirm the diagnosis or show the improvement, like any blood tests or any x-rays or anything like that.
Oh, in my practice I don't do any tests. I just speak with people and listen to them, and then I make a decision in what kind of illness.
Estes diagnósticos variam tanto como os psiquiatras que os fazem. Nestas cenas de câmara escondida, uma pessoa visitou vários psiquiatras queixando-se dos mesmos sintomas.
I'm extremely unorganized, and I didn't used to be. It's caused problems in the family. It's caused problems getting, I'm self-employed.
You've got ADD, ADHD, you're depressed, and your depression is bipolar depressed.
So you have a brain chemistry disorder, and it's probably genetic.
You have a lot of the symptoms of depression.
So it seems like it is a mixed picture. What that means is like we got some depressive symptoms and some, high symptoms.
If you're bipolar, I'll need to give you a mood stabilizer. We don't know. I kind of doubt it.
It's considered low-grade bipolar.
You are more of the ADD than ADHD.
And as far as medications for depression, because I would recommend that you start a medication, which are Prozac, Zoloft, Paxil, Celexa.
Usually Propylene XR is pretty good.
I'll give you some Lexapro in the morning and some Trazodone at night.
Lamictal is a better medication for that. It works on your depression also.
But the treatment for any bipolar cycling is the same. lithium,
Remeron is another one.
trazodone,
Tegretol,
Lipigood, Wellbutrin,
lexapro, lamictal,
Equatroid,
depakote,
lithium.
Ambien.
You may need an antidepressant also with your lamictal.
We don't know if I give you a medication if it is going to work or not.
To a certain degree, it's trial and error.
You never know if it's the right drug.
How many people have I cured? Well, there are no real cures right now in psychiatry.
I have cured none of my patients.